I'm Jo Catley, and I ended up here after working with the operations manager here prior to children. I was working with him full time after I'd finished my studies at Otago University. A previous person I actually contracted to, she actually worked in town. She understood the value of working mums as well, and she sort of said she actually had a meeting with somebody who said he hires mums because they've got so much to multitask with trying to handle children and being a wife, a mother, a worker, that they just get stuff done and there's no mucking around, and sort of they squash so much into a small space of time that they're very efficient workers. So there is the thought out there, I think. However, I think a lot of people always still think of a job as a full-time job. Smaller businesses, I think, in general are the ones that actually want to think outside the square in terms of full-time, because they can't afford full-time workers, so therefore the part-time workers are there. A lot of people who aren't parents generally don't go for part-time jobs unless they've got other things in their life, but a lot of people just, their job is their life, the majority of their life, because they've obviously got to earn the money and earn the living. So I haven't really experienced people who don't really think about mums. When they're thinking full-time, it's not really a mum thing, and a lot of mums that I know don't actually want to work full-time because they've just got too much on and it drives them insane. But I think the flexibility of working from home for a lot of businesses is actually allowing mums to get back into the workforce, which is a really good thing, because there is a lot of us who are qualified people, but we just don't have the time, and we also want that work-life balance as well, to spend time with the children while they're growing up, and they're going to obviously get the better experience of a parent who's there as well, and then we're passing that on to generations as well, and they can see their parent working but also having fun in their life, and we sort of want the kids to grow up knowing that you can actually have fun while you're working. They've all got, apart from a couple of which are slightly older, they most of them have children at school. I've just had basically it's a word of mouth kind of appointment. Misha was interviewed and went through that stage, but she ticked all the boxes. She was actually a friend of my youngest daughter's, friend is her son, and she's just actually immigrated from South Africa, I think came in about February, and her husband's a civil engineer and obviously got a job, and so she's basically at home, and I just put her name forward and got her CV and stuff, and it was on file. And when a job came up, she ticked all the boxes, mainly because of her availability, really. That she wasn't looking for full-time work, and she was very flexible. She could come in like whatever days were required and things like that. So so there's a lot down there. I mean, some that have slightly older children than mine. Mine are only at primary school, but it all just works. Yeah, it really does work. Obviously there's fluctuations in sales, and then the cash flow obviously follows with things like that. We're just lucky enough to have had a lot of capital introduced from the owner of the business, so we've had that behind us, and therefore when we've actually had to borrow, it's been easy because we've had a lot of that equity within the business anyway. In terms of the flexibility of staff, definitely helps with the cash flow, because there is no, there are a few people who actually have set hours, but we have quite a bit of casual staff. Occasionally when we've been short on casual staff, we've had to use temp staff, which obviously has a bit of a margin on what you'd pay in wages, but it definitely helps that we don't have to pay staff when we're idle, basically, when in the off seasons really. So it definitely helps. Having customers overseas obviously creates extra challenges. There is the logistics of things, which is outside my role. The only thing with logistics that I deal with is checking freight invoices when they come in, that they're actually in line with the quotes that we received. Quite often they're not, so I've got to deal with the freight companies. There's language issues, of course. We're actually pretty lucky. We have distributors over the world who actually have in contact with our customers, so they actually speak English, so that's useful. Foreign currency risk, obviously. We basically have forward cover. We only cover about out to 9 months, because the banks if you can't actually fill those contracts, then the banks allow you to roll for about 3 months. They don't like to roll past 12 months, and then it gets risky for them. But basically, we have the strategy that we don't want to cover all of the sales, because obviously if we cover at one stage and then the exchange rate drops in our favour, we're kind of committed to those rates that we actually had booked into. So we basically try and cover our upside. So basically when the New Zealand dollar strengthens, we want to make sure that we're not exposed to it being too strong and then not actually getting as much in New Zealand cash. However, if we actually cover, for example, probably easy to give examples, if we cover the US dollar and we actually buy US dollars at 72 cents, so 1 New Zealand dollar buys 72 cents US. If the exchange rate drops and then 1 New Zealand dollar buys 68 cents, essentially what we do is we kind of blend them. We use some contracts at 72 and some contracts at 78. What Ross, the CEO, does, he actually prices on a specific rate, which is 72, and therefore we try and cover foreign currency so it doesn't go above 72, and therefore we get a lower margin. In terms of what makes this company successful, it's a wide range of things. I do think the people involved, the loyalty to those people. There's been Ross and Mike here from the start, and Ross has always had a very open mind. He hasn't been into the hierarchy of things. He's willing to listen to whoever's got ideas, which is really good. I'm not a hierarchy person either. I don't like big tall structures and things like that. We're all on the same wavelength. We have a laugh in the office. If someone's grumpy, they might swear in the office, and we all sort of laugh and sort of get on board, and it's sort of like there's a lot of support with the people, and I think having a wide variety of skills with those people as well. Developing networks with your suppliers as well, in particular the logistics, and also our major supplier, which is the injection moulding company, Plastics Injection Moulding Company in Napier, which obviously is now under our control, so it's increasing that supply chain as well. That's been a big bonus here. We can obviously, because we've got the power, we can change our payment terms with them when it suits us as well. So there's a bit of a sort of us and them kind of joke. It's like, oh, we won't worry about them. We don't pay those people anyway, we'll just order and we don't pay them anyway. So it's a bit of a joke, and it's quite nice to have them on board as well. We always have the Jaffa jokes and this and that going on, but it's all really in good faith, and it is good fun, and I think that's part of it. I guess the business is ever increasing, so it's a matter of juggling the workload with my reduced hours, not 40 hours, my 25 hours a week. However, there's always been discussion along the way that at some point we will need an office junior person who does more of the lower level stuff, because I do everything right from sort of start, like creditors' invoices, creditors' payments, little bank recs and all that sort of thing. So I'm not all doing all the high financial end of things, but I do it right from ground level up. But also I provide support to the Napier administration lady. She's not a qualified accountant or anything, but it also sort of gives me that experience in training someone in our system. So when I actually have someone come on board here, I can pretty much just train them on what they need to do. So it's really the increasing workflow from the growth of the business that I see as a challenge probably in my job. But I'm a very systems orientated person, and the CEO's very aware of that, and he knows that when I get systems in place, they actually do most of the work for me rather than me having to do the work. The systems are there. You plug a number in and it spits one out type thing. It might take an hour to set up, but it saves a lot of time in the long run anyway. So it's a lot of planning, getting systems in place ready for having someone else on board. I'm a bit of a control freak, so I like to make sure things are done right. That's the only thing. I guess it's an accountant thing in a way. Yeah. So it'd be a matter of making sure that we get the right person who has attention to detail and all that sort of thing, so I don't have to go back fixing errors and finding. The problem is I find errors at a later stage. Sometimes it takes more to unwind them and do them than it would have for me to start with, so I think that will probably be a challenge, is letting go and letting someone else do some of the work mostly due to time constraints really. It's all about the culture, and I think culture is a huge thing, and if people are allowed to speak up when something's not working for them and things like that, because you won't really know unless something goes wrong, like if your system's not working, and you won't actually know if something's going wrong unless someone actually says it or there is a big error, and it's better to actually have someone identify something that's maybe not going to work or that's not working for them now, rather than get further down the track, have wasted a whole lot of labour on something that's not going to work, or have a big error in a big customer order and it actually, you know, it'll take a lot of time to actually fix that. So I think it's really about hiring the right people and making sure you've got a good culture that allows them to sort of speak up. I mean, they're not always going to be right either, but it's just expressing their opinions on something, as long as they're happy to actually have it explained to them that maybe it won't work that way, and they're actually okay with that and they're not going to press it. We've had, I can't remember what nationality she was, a woman in the past who's been quite assertive with certain things, and she doesn't like taking no for an answer, and her idea is always right, and that's obviously didn't work that well here, because then it created it was like one of those bad egg type things. You had one in the factory and then the rest of the team weren't very happy and all that sort of thing, and I've noticed a huge difference since she left, that's for sure.